Hello, I'm an industrial designer, so I bought this laptop last week. We're just gonna start with a little exercise. Can y'all see that at all? Okay, which design is better? Who thinks it's the sampler? Cool. Who thinks it's the sewing machine? Who thinks maybe it's a trick question? Good news is you're all right. It depends on who you are and what you value when you come to that product. So the Teenage Engineering Sampler is about the visual experience of looking at it and looking at someone else using it, and also about the aesthetic experience of playing with it. It's not really optimized for hardcore performance, according to my stepbrother, the sound engineer, but it's a very functional product. It just has a lot of other layers built on top of it. Whereas the sewing machine is prioritizing a very different experience. It's prioritizing being as unobtrusive as possible to a very different and technically intensive creative process. It also has a lot of built-in functionality that needs to be explained very quickly, which is why it comes with one of the best built-out printed manuals I've ever seen. It taught my wife how to sew on it. It taught me how to sew on it. It taught my wife's grandmother how to maintain it. It's been in full operation with no service since the 90s. So it's a really different level of intensity that's being applied to that. So design makes promises. My name is Clara Burtness. I'm the founder of Drop of Ernest Studio, and I'm an industrial designer, and I'm representing the UCRIT Air project. I'm the lead industrial designer on that project. So what do industrial designers do? I left my notes in my bag. We leverage artistic skill and industry knowledge to make physical objects convincing, effective, and repeatable. Repeatable is the tricky part there. I'm going to walk you through the basics of my design process using UCRIT Air as an example. And I say my design process, this is a pretty well-established system that a lot of people use. But hopefully this will help you think more about how design applies to your own work. And I'm using design in a pretty specific way, talking about the creative development, or the visual and aesthetic development of a product. So UCRIT has 2 industrial designers, a game designer, and an illustrator on our team. It is a hardware project and has a lot of heavy software work involved as well. So why do we have all of these creative people on the team? M. Pang talks about how cryptography and, frankly, software in general is real damn clever and full of math, which makes it really intimidating and hard to approach from someone who is maybe very interested or invested on a personal or values-based level, but that's a big hill to climb. So the solution is art. If you stop listening to me because of the really cute pixel art, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So we are making a toy. That is, as much as we've tried to put into this product, the fact that it is a toy has ended up being one of the most important parts, because no matter what feature we add to this physical object, if it's not fun, it's not going to cross the bridge that we're trying to get it to cross. I wanted to start with what I started with on this project, because one of the most valuable things that we've gotten out of this process has been the iteration. So when I first joined, I was contacted by some random physicist on Twitter who saw my work on a different scientific equipment project, and they needed a real tight turnaround to get this 3D model over there into something that they could 3D print and deliver in 40 days. I had about a week of that time to make that happen. So this is important because it defined the scope of that particular exercise. For creative projects that I do anyway, I define the scope in 3 ways. There's your dreams. That's like literally all your secret things that you want to make happen through this work. There's your cultural context. That's who all is watching you while you're doing this work and what do they care about. And then you have your technical requirements, which are, frankly, the wheelhouse that I rely heavily on people like you to understand better. So the scope for this first round was pretty slim, and that's okay because the time frame made it necessary. The focus was very specifically on delivering this device, getting it there so that people could play with the hardware and play with the software in a context that explained why that hardware and software was the way it was, which in this case, I don't know if I said it yet, it's a air quality monitor that is also a toy, so it has a lot of other entertaining functionality involved. So the next stage was an evolution of that same PCB, that same hardware, and it became known as the Kawaii Mecha version. I'll go into that in a bit. But this is when I started understanding a bit more about the breadth of the project. And I say this is when I started because I'm a freelancer, so there was about 6 months between these two when I didn't hear anything about this project at all. So it was nice to check back in. And the command was basically the same: make it more pretty, make it more interesting to play with, make it more aesthetic. But a lot of the technical requirements were the same. It's the same PCB, same screen. So it had a lot of, there's a lot of form interpretation to be had, but not a lot of overall redesigning involved. This is when I first learned about Ethereum and the accelerated tech, and it was pretty high level, but it helped me to start of get into the headspace and the aesthetics of the world that is being built and sort of figure out how to interpret that into something that made sense to hold in your hands. Some of the things that we identified in this round were the Kawaii Mecha was, I was talking to Em, the team leader, and I was trying to summarize it quickly, kind of off the cuff, and Em ran with it and thought it was exactly the look they were going for. So we've got the sort of endlessly variable, but really recognizable format of a mech suit from like an anime. That's kind of where the idea came from. And that ended up echoing really nicely with this 3D printed product because it's endlessly visually customizable from iteration to iteration, which kind of highlights the fact that this thing is not a consumer product that got 100,000 of the exact same one made or millions of the exact same one made. It's something that can be opened up and adapted and changed. You can make your own case if you want to. You can add your own add-ons if you want to. That was built into it very early on. So this device has air sensors built into it, which is important for when we're talking about data sovereignty, because you're not relying on a pre-existing network of data collection to understand the world around you. You have the hardware in your hand, you're collecting the data in your hand, it's not going anywhere else to be interpreted. All of it is built into the software that's on your device. And then through that, you also get this fun little game that allows you to explore that data and explore the knowledge that you're developing for yourself. You are, of course, welcome to share it, and we have a lot of ways to do that. But it's something that you have complete control over. And then, I don't remember what the segue was here. So, okay, so we learned some important things when we started distributing this and getting a lot of data. Em uses an example here of this chart. They would like you very much to not think too hard about why the CO2 in the room might have spiked about 9 p.m. and then tapered off immediately about half an hour later. This is in their bedroom. But it exposed that we know a lot about people when we start monitoring their very granular air quality. And that's a huge security issue and it's a huge privacy issue. So this is when the project started to focus much more heavily on privacy and security and allowing people to understand how they're controlling the data that they're now collecting and how they can choose to share it and how it can be encrypted when they share it. So we made some mods, and this is where the visual design ended up paying off pretty well because we had this very cut in and segmented and graphic visual aesthetic. It allowed us to just kind of make bosses wherever we wanted on the case and stick what we wanted into it, and it still kind of made sense. And this was really important because we wanted to make sure we could get the tech onto this device and have people play with it and get user feedback for what that experience was like as quickly as possible so that we could start developing it into something more and more real and accessible. So it got a little tail for its LoRa antenna, and it got a little boss out of the back so that we could put in more encryption chips. And it continued to basically be otherwise similar, and it got a lot of distribution, a lot of people played with it. And we started to get a better idea of what we want to do next with this product. First one is smaller. It's chunky. It has these really big sensors in it, which create really good data. And we realized it was actually too good. It is overbuilt for what people who are playing with this toy actually need to understand the world around them, and at the cost of it being inconvenient to play with and uncomfortable to hold. If you're talking about getting a lot of new adopters and curious people involved, that's not ideal. So we wanted to do a little better. I thought of some ways to do that, quite a few ways to do that, and was like, nah, it's not quite what I was looking for. Nah, it's not quite what I was looking for. We realized we really needed to understand a little bit more about what we were trying to do in order to make better decisions. And that, I think, is the most important part of this process for me, is that we learned about what we were trying to do by trying to do it. And we had a better understanding of that because we were trying to visualize it and put it in people's hands in a way where we were communicating to them what we wanted them to do with the device as soon as they picked it up. So it's still a really fun toy. That's still the whole point. Everything else is secondary to that, and we'll get into why in a moment. We focused a little bit more on, the Ethereum mandate came out, and we were able to analyze it a little more. We were able to sort of determine what things about the CROPS acronym we could demonstrate the best. That ended up being open source and free, so everything, hardware, software, case, all the way up is as open source as we can possibly make it. We're not going to launch it if it's not. And then the technical requirements, we've just been able to refine so that it provides a better user experience. So we went a little bit farther back into concept. We started looking at different forms. How's this thing going to look in your hand? How are you going to hold it? How strong does it have to be? Do we want people to feel like they can take this mountain biking? Do we want people to feel like they can stick whatever they want onto it and it'll work? These are all different things that you can signal with the shape and color and material of the design. So after doing a little bit more thinking, we realized we needed to start making some pretty clear decisions about the form factor of the product. And that is because we needed to pick a priority. There were kind of two different groups of concepts that started to emerge. We had the ones that felt more like a handheld gaming device, and then we had ones that felt more like a piece of sensing equipment. And those pushed the design into two different directions, and we needed to understand more about what people found more appealing and what most aligned with our goals for the product. But M said, yes, we want both of those things. And we really wanted them to pick something, so we started reiterating how we were going to divide up those two priorities. So it could be this air quality monitor that protects you with cryptography and rewards you with fun, or it could be a toy for adults that uses air quality, among other things, to make cryptography more accessible. Okay, those are kind of wordy and specific, and they sound very similar. Maybe we're actually trying to do a secret third thing. And the secret third thing is basically what I'm doing right now. This device is a advocate all on its own. It exists in the world to allow people access on their own terms and based on their own interests to understand the technology that makes that device possible, to give people the experience of playing with essentially a piece of consumer electronics that's fun and doesn't make you sign into it. It doesn't take your data away from you. It has a lot of really novel experiences that most people will never have access to unless they pick up this thing that is approachable and familiar. So this object represents the future, and it's a future that we want to have, and we want you to enjoy exploring it. And I thought some folks might be thinking, will it talk to my Sovereign AI? Yes, it will, for the same reason that it will talk to a keyboard or an antenna or anything else you want. We want people to be able to benefit from the technology that's at the core of this product so that they can expand on the world that we are starting with this object. So that's a pretty hefty thing to pull off in a little thing that you hand to someone at a convention. So how do we start visualizing that? One of the first places we started was focusing on that orientation and the buttons. And then we quickly realized that we needed to start making some strong decisions about what the colors were, what the materials were. we wanted to differentiate ourselves from the very dense, opaque look that you see in most consumer products, like phones, for example. It's a little block. It tells you not to open it, basically. It tells you you're gonna break this thing if you try to do anything with it. So we wanted to differentiate ourselves very dramatically from that. Transparency of plastic seems like kind of a duh, but it does allow people immediately to understand that there's something inside this that's not something they've experienced before. We're also connecting it more to familiar imagery of gardens and domesticity and soft colors and natural colors, and that allows to sort of make connections to a more familiar world. I don't know if y'all have noticed, but a lot of this cartography stuff is kind of bad PR. It's hard to relate to it or explain it to someone. It's hard to understand how it's relevant in your life. And giving it a more familiar package, as long as you make good on your promise that what you're demonstrating is in the package, is a really important step to getting people who might otherwise not realize that they have a role to play, understand and develop and integrate their skill sets. So we looked at a bunch of different inspiration. One of my personal favorites is set design on Star Trek, and that's because Star Trek is one of the few sci-fi franchises that's really widespread that actually has a positive outlook about the future, regardless of how you feel about whether it's likely or realistic in any way. It actually tries to show you what living your normal day-to-day life in the world might look like in this far future, without sort of the trappings of the action movie plot built in. So through this design iteration, we began to have a much better understanding of what we want to do. And if we hadn't spent the time to do that, we wouldn't have been able to even make pretty clear hardware decisions about what kind of sensors we wanted to use, how precise they needed to be, where the sensors need to be in the case, how the software buffers different interference that the sensors might be picking up, where on the case all of our connectivity points are, how capable they have to be. All of these really technical hardware decisions had to be guided by the aesthetic and intentional decisions that we were making about the function of the product overall and how we wanted it to exist in the world. So we would like you very much to add a little more art into your projects and try making some promises and see where that takes you. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for me? Thank you very much.